In today's show, the Blazers hang tough with one of the best teams in the NBA. Right up until they don't. Plus, we got to see an extended look at Scoot Henderson and Anfernee Simons sharing a backcourt. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, I want to talk about the Blazers game against the Wolves. They played Minnesota in the first of two meetings Tuesday evening at the Moda Center. You're listening to Wednesday, February 14th show. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you celebrating. And if this isn't your holiday, happy Wednesday. Thanks for listening to the program. They hosted the first two meetings against the Wolves on Tuesday evening. And they hung tough for three quarters. I want to talk about that game, what we saw from the Blazers. The big takeaway for me is that we got an extended look at Anfernee Simons and Scoot Henderson, the backcourt of the backcourt of the very near future, but for my money, probably not the long-term future. Probably not the backcourt of the future. But I want to see that. I've been begging for this pairing to play together, and they finally did. So we will talk about that in the second segment, and then I want to talk a little bit about Delano Banton, who had his second game with the Blazers and continues to show some weirdness that kind of helps the Blazers diversify what they're able to do on offense. And we'll talk a little bit about his future and the rest of the sort of young core as we close out the show. But first, let's do what we do. Fastest recap in the West. Blazers lose this game 121-109. And they were down 37-25 after one because Anthony Edwards. This is about all the ants. One of the ants is a lot better than the other, and he was on the road team tonight. And Edwards had 18 in the first quarter. He was so stinking good, and the Wolves led 37-25 after one. But the Blazers hung tough, down 12, but they cut it to 8 at halftime, 59-51 at the break, and they were in it, right? Like the Minnesota is coming up playing the second game of a back-to-back, and it's like, hey, they're kind of in the game. The Blazers keep it close throughout that third quarter. Trailed by double digits, but a strong run to close the quarter. 84-83 Wolves after three, and then early in that fourth quarter, Scoot Henderson takes a top of the key three. He gets fouled, makes 3 free throws. The Blazers go up by 2. 86-84. The first 3 points of that fourth quarter. Here we go. Building's rocking. 15 seconds into the fourth quarter, Portland has a chance to take the best team in the West, maybe the team playing better than anyone else in the NBA right now. The Celtics are pretty good. But Minnesota coming off a huge win against the Clippers, playing really, really, really good basketball. Second night of a back-to-back, and now all of a sudden they're on the ropes down to entering the fourth quarter, 15 seconds into the fourth quarter. What do they do? Well, the Wolves rip off an 18-4 burst. Nickeil Alexander-Walker hits 4 threes. Basically over the next 5 minutes, they outscore the Blazers 18-4, and that's your ball game. They take a 102-90 lead with 6:40 left in the quarter. Chauncey Billups calls a timeout. See ya. Blazers never truly threaten in the final 6 minutes, but they were there. They were right in it until they weren't there in the fourth quarter. And Wolves going to cruise. Played from that 6 minute mark. We ended up with bench clearing minutes, the final 3:30 of the game, and the Wolves win 121-109. That's your fastest recap in the West. The Blazers got their dudes back in this one. That was the real big deal. Anfernee Simons back in the game. Back in the lineup, Scoot Henderson available tonight and played pretty darn well, and Duop Reith was available as well. So we got to see basically what amounts to a healthy version of this team right now. All the guys with, multi-day timeline injuries were out, but those who were available to come back came back and played. Chauncey Billups changed up his starting lineup, went with Anfernee Simons, Matisse Thybulle, Toumani Camara next to Jeremy Grant and DeAndre Ayton. I think the reasoning there was that Camara could guard Anfernee. could guard Ant Edwards. Like he could be that point of attack defender because that like would allow them to have someone to like truly stick on him in a way that Matisse Thybulle's that's not really his strengths on defense. And Jabari Walker brings a lot of rebounding, but he's not that sort of mobile guard, shifty guards type of defender. This is going to sound crazy, but I think that Toumani Camara, particularly early in the game, did a fine job on Anfernee Edwards. I think he guarded Ant pretty darn well. And Ant had 18 in the first quarter. It didn't matter. He was making everything. He got hot early, hit a three early, and just started feeling himself and was like, cool, I'm going to hit like really tough jumpers. I'm going to attack the rim. He's so strong. Like he just was great in this game. Like he was MVP good. Edwards is not going to get MVP votes, even though he did in the ESPN straw poll. Shout out to whoever voted for him. But like he's really good. Blazers were led by 22 from DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre had 22 and 16, started 9 for 9 from the field, missed one shot. It was 11 of 12 for his 22 points to go with 16 boards. Amazingly, doing what he does, doesn't take a free throw. But 9 for 9. The only shot he missed was like a little turnaround fader from the right block, the left block. He was really solid offensively in this game. I think early in the year he was a little slower getting into his mid-range jump shot. It felt like he was like kind of confused at where he was going to get the ball on pick and rolls and stuff and where he was going to get to. And I feel like he has really figured out where his spots are going to be. And I feel like he's got better chemistry particularly with Scoot, where they had no chemistry to begin the season, and continuing to develop the chemistry that he's always kind of had with Anfernee Simons. And he's just been more decisive and like figuring out where he's going to, particularly in the mid range. He rolled to the rim pretty well in this game, but I'm specifically talking about his mid range attack. I thought he has a strong understanding of where to be. Anfernee Simons, we'll talk about him a bunch in the second segment. He had 20, but 6 of 19 shooting. Scoot Henderson, 14 and 9 dimes. Delano Banton, 16 off the bench, but he did a little damage in garbage time. And Edwards had 41. 41, 4 boards. He 16 of 27 from the field. Just got hot early, stayed hot forever. Helped them really shut the door late. He was really good. Karl-Anthony Towns got in foul trouble early. He had 3 fouls and only played 7 minutes in the first half. Only ended up playing 19 in the whole game. He had 13, 16 and 15 for Rudy Gobert, 18 off the bench for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who had freaking 4 threes in 6 minutes in the fourth quarter to decide this game. I think the Blazers played well. And at this point in the season, I think it is a little redundant to say, I'm proud of our sweet boys for playing tough. And I think proud is probably the wrong word, but they're back to that level that they were at the beginning of the season, where every night I don't think they're going to get blown off the floor. Like it was when they were injured, they were kind of, at the beginning of January, they had a bunch of injuries and the basketball was awful. And I think that was some injuries and some just kind of like the season kind of wearing on them. They've kind of gotten back on the boat and steadied themselves and kind of, they find themselves in a better spot just because of health, getting a little bit healthier, and probably just sometimes you really go through it, and they were really going through it in early January. But I feel like they're in a stretch where I expect them to be largely competitive in games. Now, like this game got away from them, right? They all of a sudden they were down by as many as 20. Like it was like in the fourth quarter, it was like, whoops, this one's over. Because it just happened really quick. It was, they're up 2, and then it's like, oh, they got blitzed because they're playing a really good team. But I came away feeling like, yeah, they played a really good team tough. And I'll try not to say this after every single game, but I think they did play a really good team tough in this one. And I was mostly had positive feelings coming out of this. But what I was really intrigued by was the pairing of Anfernee Simons and Scoot Henderson. And when I asked Chauncey Billups out after the game about it, he said exactly what I wanted to hear. You're about to see a bunch of it. Huzzah. Let's talk about what it looked like on Tuesday evening. But first, let me tell you about Hungry Root. Hungry Root is your partner in healthy living. It's the easiest way to get fresh, high-quality groceries and simple, healthy recipes delivered to your door. Here's how it works. You take a fun, short little quiz, and then Hungry Root will get to know your personal health goals, what you like to eat, what kitchen appliances you use, and more about kind of how you get down in the kitchen. Then they'll build you a personalized cart with all your grocery needs for the week and give you delicious recipe recommendations to put those groceries to use. Hungry Root's going to recommend recipes and groceries based on those personal tastes you share, but each order is customizable. So if they say, hey, you might like this, you can say, nah, and go right into your cart and add things, take away things, check out, browse the recipes and find out what you like, take their suggestions or just choose anything you want. They got fresh produce, high quality meat and seafood. They got pantry staples if that's what you need. They got healthy snacks if you're just looking to get you through the day. They got sweets if you got a sweet tooth, plus ready-to-eat meals and much more. Everything from Hungry Root follows a simple standard. It's got to taste good, be quick to make, and contain whole, trusted ingredients. And right now, Hungry Root is offering my listeners over at Locked On NBA 40% off over here on the Locked On NBA channel. 40% off your first delivery and free veggies for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/lockedon to get 40% off your first delivery and get free veggies. That's hungryroot.com/lockedon. Don't forget to use that link so they know I sent you. All right. The backcourt of the relatively near future hath arrived. Scoot Henderson returns after missing a couple games with an ankle injury, and he doesn't start because he seems like they're just going to keep him off the bench for the remainder of the season, although he played starters minutes, so what does it matter? And he played next to Anfernee Simons. The thing, if you're an everyday listener, I appreciate you if you are, I've been clamoring for it, that the post-trade deadline, the number one thing I want to see is Anfernee Simons and Scoot Henderson play together. And it's not because I think this is going to unlock the perfect team and the Blazers will have finally figured it out and everything will have, naturally fix itself because Scoot Henderson and Anfernee Simons will play together. I want to see them play together precisely because it might not work. Precisely because it hasn't worked. They had to bail on it early in the year because it just they got crushed in those minutes because Scoot wasn't very good to start the year. But then as they move forward, even the minutes that they separated just Scoot or just Ant were kind of equally effective, but it was like together they were still a mess. But this isn't the season in Blazer land to run from it. Wins and losses aren't particularly important. What matters is getting as much data as you possibly can on the development of the roster and what it could look like into the future. And some of that has been taken out of their hands due to injuries. You're not going to see Shaedon Sharpe probably for the rest of the year. We'll see what happens. Obviously, they've missed big chunks of time with Simons out and with DeAndre out, and now Malcolm Brogdon's going to miss a couple weeks. Like some of the like, how does this fit together has been taken out of their hands. So when they have the opportunity to experiment, I really, really, really wanted them to see Scoot and Ant play together. One of the reasons that they struggled together is that they're small. The defense is always going to be a problem. Anfernee Simons playing two is it's tough. Scoot is maybe going to be a competitive and good defender in the league, but right now he's not a very good defender, and he's always going to be the size that he is, 6'2"-ish, right? That matters. Even if you're a really good defender, 6'2" is 6'2". Like that you're always going to be that height. And Ant is just straight up has never been a good defender in his career and is not a good defensive player. And if you put if Anfernee Simons is not the smallest player on the court, you're going to have some bad defensive lineups. That might just always be the case. But then that is sort of for the future, right? Is the defensive issues. For the present, it's like, can they be good on offense together, or did they both need the ball in their hands so dang much that they can't figure it out? Because the best version of Anfernee Simons is playing kind of pick and roll, reading and making plays on offense, and getting into a shot off the dribble and putting pressure in the defense in an on-ball role. And Scoot Henderson, because he's not a great spot-up shooter, and he's actually kind of been fine by the numbers, but they don't treat him like a good spot-up shooter. He can't be his best self if he doesn't have the ball in his hands and gets use athleticism and attack and make plays and all those things, right? Do they sap each other's skills so much that they can't be the future? Well, let's find out. All of that pessimism, right? Who cares? Let's just see it. And tonight we saw it. Scoot Henderson checks in with 7:47 left in the first quarter and then plays the following 4 minutes of the game, about 4:40 of the game, and the Blazers were outscored by 7 in that first quarter. But Anfernee Simons, or Dang it. This is the third time in this episode. Ant Edwards. I got too many ants in this game. Ant Edwards was cooking, right? Like plus minus in those little small sample sizes means like somebody made shots and Ant Edwards made shots. So they were -7. But one of the things I noticed there, as soon as Scoot checked in, you know who got the ball in his hand? Scoot. So I asked Anfernee Simons about it after the game. It's kind of what's that read like? Like when you're sharing with Scoot, what does that read like? And I thought Ant had a really mature response. He said, now he says, and I says, he said, when I asked, like, if Chauncey Billups doesn't call a play, like if they're coming up the court, Billups probably calls, like, he can be a little hands-on sometimes, but probably half, maybe a little less, but I would say half, sometimes more, depending on the game. But like half the plays come from the bench and half are just just hoop, or the point guard calls it on the way up the court. But young team, Chauncey Billups is gonna kind of want to have some say in it. Sometimes he needs to help them get organized because they're not organized. But Ant said if in every case where Billups doesn't call a play, he's gonna let Scoot go because he believes the best version of Scoot is the point guard. It's his natural position. And Anfernee Simons said that he wants to maximize what Scoot can be. So if he's going to share the court with Scoot, he's going to just play, or he's going to start in an off-ball role, right? He's going to start an off-ball role. And he mentioned, like, that's nothing new for him. He's played a bunch of shooting guard. He's played next to Damian Lillard. He knows what it's like when you're off ball and then the ball swings to you and then you get your chance to attack, or you get your chance to kind of find space as a shooter and get into shots. And I kind of pushed back against that. And I was like, well, Scoot isn't Dame, man. Like, come on. And he was like, it's true. It's not the same attention. And a lot of times when Scoot has the ball, his man doesn't leave him. So in the past, like if Ant was playing off of Dame, his man might leave him to help because Damian Lillard is terrifying. Scoot Henderson is not terrifying. He's a young player figuring it out. So the off-ball defender is still paying attention to Ant. And he said he was saying when I asked him in a scrum, this was like a public interview, it's probably on the Blazers YouTube page, like that he you kind of just, you make your read, right? Is like he had a couple times in this game where the defense sagged off enough of him that he could get a shot off. But if not, you make your read. You catch, you see what happens, you get into a second side action, which is going to be another pick and roll, or you attack in isolation and you go to work. But every time Ant wants to, if he's on the court with Scoot and there isn't a call coming from the bench, he wants Scoot to be the one, to be the initiator. And I think that is a maturity and understanding of like, I'm better in an off-ball situation, and the most important thing for Scoot is maximizing his gifts. So every time, I'm not going to go grab it and say it has to be mine, but every time that we cross half court in a non-transition situation, I want Scoot to initiate because that's the best for Scoot, it's the best for the team, it's the best for our future. I played okay their first 5 minutes. I thought it was fine. Ants attacked early off a second side. Like by the second side, I mean they run a pick and roll on one side, then the ball swings to the other side of the court, and Anfernee Simons can attack then. There was a play where two plays where Scoot kind of, one where he dribbled into a jump shot, one where he dribbled and screen, couldn't get a good look off a screen, kick to Jeremy Grant in the corner for a three. There was a no pass possession in transition where Anfernee Simons gets a shot up. There was no pass possession in semi-transition where Scoot gets a shot up, but they're playing off each other. It wasn't awkward. There was a couple segments in the second half that clearly there was a play coming in from the sideline, and their sort of flow getting into it was a little bit awkward. One of them, Anfernee Simons hit a three off of. It was like an ugly play that didn't work out, and hits a three from the right wing. Second quarter, they played an extended run, or they played less than they played in the fourth, or in the first. In the second quarter, they played less than they did in the first. They played just 3 minutes and 45 seconds, but they were +3. So in the first half, and all told, played 8 minutes together, -4. The team was -8. So they were fine. They were fine in those minutes. Then Scoot Henderson basically played the whole second half. Matisse Thybulle went out early in the second half. Minute 90 seconds into the second half, he checks out. Scoot comes in, and the Blazers play 9 minutes of the third quarter with them together, this is what I want, like a full run 9 minutes against the starting level team and the best defense in the NBA. And the Blazers were +3 in those 9 minutes in the third quarter. It was totally functional. There were some awkward moments where it was like, you go, I go, or actually, hey, wait, and then you could see Chauncey saying like, swing it to Ants and then, set the screen, DA not getting into the screen quickly enough, like some panic stuff. But for the most part, a functional offense. There weren't moments that looked like, oh, that's not going to work, as there had been early in the season, because Scoot Henderson played better. They were better. Fourth quarter got away from them. They played 4 minutes together. They're outscored by 12 points in those 4 minutes. But that was just as the game was getting away. It was more about them not being able to defend. I think Ant was kind of bad in this game. I think as much as I liked the balance and I liked that the Blazers went to it, and I thought Scoot played really well. I thought this was probably the best I've seen him run pick and rolls with DeAndre Ayton that I can remember. That might be recency bias because I just watched this game and I'm now recording this podcast, but this was maybe I'll hedge with the recency bias. This was one of the better games I can remember. The DeAndre Ayton, Scoot Henderson pick and roll working together, and DA was making jumpers, and I thought Scoot found him. He had one really nice wraparound pass on a right side pick and roll. Found DA rolling all the way to the rim for a bucket. It was a really nice feed. I thought Scoot was legitimately good in this game. Ant wasn't, and the offense, you look at just the raw field goal stuff. He was 6 of 19 from the floor, including 2 of 9 inside the arc. It's the best defensive team in the league. And some of the Blazers' struggles is that they just need Ant to shoot a lot because they don't have a lot of other guys that can get into shots and get themselves to the rim. Literally can't dribble from beyond the 3-point line into where they need to go. That's just kind of that's just maybe a challenging truth of their roster. But I thought he was, so on offense, the efficiency wasn't there, but I don't think he was that bad on offense. I think he was, his defense bothered me a little bit. They tried to hide him on Kyle Anderson, and Kyle Anderson just used his size and his strength to just kind of get what he wanted against Ant. He only made one shot, little floating jump hook in the paint, but he got fouled, got himself into the paint and got fouled. There was one where Anderson got into the lane late, and Anfernee Simons fouled him and just smacked the stanchion under the rim, truly mad that I let him beat me again. Anderson is so slow, and he's not a guy who looks at the rim. And if he's able to get to his spots on offense and be aggressive and score, it's a bad sign. I mentioned, and I'll say this in quickly because this is a much larger conversation for another day. But I don't think this pairing is going to work long term. Not because of their offensive skill sets, but just because of size, and also because I think it would be a crime to make Blazer fans have to watch another undersized 2-guard play next to a normal-sized point guard. Another smallish backcourt duo heading into the future would be insanity beyond. It would be I think Joe Cronin would probably have to go to jail for his crimes if he did that to Blazer fans. I don't think he will, but that's a sort of their fit, and what the roster does is a conversation for another day. So, but I think let's see this pairing as much as we possibly can going forward, because what is there to lose? And if it does end up working, if it does end up being oh, this offense works, this works, then bigger conversations about what else would be needed. You can start thinking about what that looks like. And also there's no reason to run from it at this time of year. Lean into it. And they did. And Chauncey Billups said, he said in his post game when I asked, he's going to play it a bunch for the rest of the season because he basically has to, and he should. So great news. I'm happy. I thought it was fine in night 1, and let's see it night 1,000,000 from here on out. Okay, let's talk about funkiness and Delano Banton and the future of this roster because of the funk. That's what we'll do to close the show. But first, I want to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. It's what brings home that winning championship trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain that vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits to LED headlights and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts to choose from for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, baby, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Still a pass versus point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Delano Banton came off the bench tonight and scored 16 points. He had 3 assists, had 5 boards, turned the ball over 4 times, and continued to be that type of weird basketball player that I cannot get enough of. But he didn't really play point guard. I heard an interview on my way to the arena today. I was listening to Rip City Radio and had an interview with Blazers assistant coach Jonah Hurskew and Travis Demers, the Blazers radio play-by-play voice. Shout out to Travis, and sure, shout out to Jonah, someone who I've never talked to. What Hurskew said in that interview is that they liked what Banton did on the ball in his first game against the Pelicans. They liked him as a point guard, and they liked what he the skill set that he brings to the table. But when everybody's healthy, he's going to play an off-ball role. And I thought that was interesting, right? Because putting non-shooters in off-ball roles in the NBA is kind of tough. It's a tough hill to climb, right? Like it's just a challenge because of the way the league works. If you don't have the ball in your hands and you're not a rim rolling 7-footer, you kind of need to stand at the 3-point line and be ready to shoot it. Like that's how modern NBA offenses work. Other teams, you can get more creative in different ways, but if you can't dribble and pass, then it's hard to maximize that creativity. Blazers offense is like super vanilla. They just like run a lot of pick and roll. They're one of the league leaders in the NBA in just sort of that action. They lean on it. But prior to Banton joining the roster, the Blazers off-ball players were kind of, their skill sets have kind of pigeonholed them into mostly being shooters, like spacers. Not a lot of them can shoot, but spacers, and then like timely cutters. Like Toumani Camara he's a pretty good cutter, and when he does cut with purpose, he can be a pretty good offensive player. Jabari Walker kind of cuts into space and finds little gaps. And Matisse Thybulle doesn't really cut, but he's that off-ball kind of spacer type. His shooting has really struggled since we made it to 2024, but they don't have a guy like Banton. They just don't have another sort of like big wing who can dribble. And Banton is skinny, right? Like the reason he's listed as a guard, as a point guard or a shooting guard is because he's skinny. He is a guard for sure. But his interesting skill set really intrigues me. It really does. If you're an everyday listener, you know that I'm kind of like a sucker for like non-shooters who make plays. Like Kyle Anderson, fun, weird player. I like him. You'll recall, if you've been listening to a long time, that at one point I was in favor of the Blazers chasing Kyle Anderson in free agency during the Dame era. Would he have fit well? I don't know, but I like him. I like big weirdos who can't shoot, who can dribble and pass. Banton is that. And in an off-ball role, he allows the Blazers to do some different stuff because you have more players on the court who can attack off the bounce, more players off the court who can read a cutter, more players on the court, who can run a pick and roll, who can, just get the ball, get themselves into the paint off the dribble, and then make a play either to get a shot off or to pass out of those plays into the paint. Banton adds that funk, adds that interesting sort of like 3-guard element to what the Blazers have been trying to do, except he's 6'7" or whatever, 6'6", 6'7", like he's wing sized. And I think that's really curious. Here's the thing. If I had to guess right now today, I bet Delano Banton isn't on the roster in the fall. He's got a non-guaranteed contract for next year. The Blazers can exercise, keep him past the guarantee date if they want him to be on the roster, and it's partially guaranteed, so they could keep him and kind of bring him into camp and make some decisions and yada yada yada. Right? Like that's a conversation for the offseason. But if I had to guess, because his contract is partially guaranteed and has some trigger dates, I would guess he's not on the team. Because the Blazers have a bunch of young parts that are under guaranteed contract. Chris Murray didn't play tonight. I mean, he did, but in garbage time. He played the final 3:30. Obviously, Ryan Rupert, the second-round pick last season, is like watching and not part of the rotation every night. You still have Anfernee Simons, and you still have Shaedon Sharpe, and you still have Scoot Henderson, all sort of on the roster. The Blazers have 4 draft picks in this upcoming draft, 2 firsts and 2 seconds. I think it's wild that they would bring 4 rookies into this particular group after kind of how they've positioned themselves. But it wouldn't 2 seems pretty reasonable. Turning 4 draft picks into 2 rookies who are in camp. I think that's like a safe bet, particularly if 2 of the picks are in the top or in the lottery, depending on what happens with the Warriors. But even if 2 of the picks are like in the first 20 picks in the draft, safe bet that they'll have both of those guys on the roster. Certainly there's a million permutations that can happen between now and then. So Banton's probably not part of the long-term future, the same way that Anfernee Simons and Scoot-Henderson probably aren't the long-term backcourt of the future, right? But I think what we, the viewing public, landed on here, like what we're watching, is the Blazers getting to experiment with skill sets, and I think that matters. What if they had another big wing who could dribble and pass? That's interesting. And what if that big wing was a non-shooter? Does that disrupt everything, or does the dribbling and the playmaking kind of offset some of the non-shooting because they can attack and get into space and they can pass, and more dudes who can pass kind of unlocks what Chauncey Billups has at least said a couple times that how he wants to play each season, even though if they haven't kind of been able to dial into it at any point. And I think the experimenting with skill sets and the seeing different types of players play off of Jeremy Grant and off of Anfernee Simons and off of Scoot-Henderson, you get a sense of kind of what you could build with into the future. Delano Banton might not be part of the long-term plan. He might just be a short timer. But the strangeness of what he brings is so alluring to me. And even if it isn't Banton who is that in the future, knowing what additional playmaking looks like next to Scoot-Henderson has value. No doubt about it. And so bring the funk. Let's let Bance as much, maybe not as much. I don't think any of us need to watch, Banton played 26 minutes tonight. He played 23 before garbage time. So he played like half the game. That's great. I think that's great. That's a good number for him to kind of get out there and see what he does and offer some different skill sets. Still not much of a shooter. I thought his hands were, he got himself dribbled into traffic a couple times where he lost the ball, had a layup opportunity on a great feed from Jabari Walker that he just straight up dropped. He's imperfect and interesting and weird, but I think that added playmaker, more guys who can make plays, is really something I'm intrigued with moving forward. I also talked to Banton in the locker room after the game, and I have a really good Banton story. I'm going to share it with you on tomorrow's show. Come back and listen to that one. It's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. If a Delano Banton story doesn't do it for you, let me tell you right now, it's fun. It's a fun story, and it's a fun show. We try to have fun here and kind of consider the Blazers I guess more like present and future. We're not doing much past these days, but if you're rocking with me, come back tomorrow and let's do it again. And then the Blazers play the T-Wolves on Thursday night. Friday's show will be a recap of that game. Then we're at the All-Star break. That's pretty fun. We got shows ahead 5 days a week. Wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. I think I already told you that. How about you do this? Tell your friends about the podcast. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.